Excellent.
Hello and good morning, and welcome to the Jersey Chamber of Commerce Hustings Online for St Mary's, Ouen and St Peter. I'm delighted that we're joined by Helen Evans, Christina Moore, Lyndon Farnham, Ian Gorst, Roland Hewling and Lucy Stevenson. They're joining us as candidates. It's good to have their company, and this of course will be able to be watched back on the Jersey Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel and will be sent to all of our members. Good to have everyone with us, and we'll start off with a quick 2-minute round of you and your manifesto. We'll do the order for the first time, and I'll change it after that with those I see on my screen just for ease of me. So Roland Hewling, you begin your 2 minutes. I've got my timer pretty much set, so we'll go from that. Your 2 minutes starts whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you, Murray. Good morning, I'm Roland Hewling, current Deputy of St Peter's. I served in both scrutiny for 2 years and then as Assistant Chief Minister with responsibility for population and migration policies. I was also on Planning Committee and the Political Oversight Group for the Our Hospital project. I was born and bred in Jersey, however spent my 35-year working career in the UK, where I worked in the high-tech industry, representing a number of software companies, including global brand names like Oracle, IBM and Symantec. I also had experience working with startups, however, unfortunately, didn't pick a unicorn. On our Jersey Alliance manifesto is in line with the excellent report New Perspectives by the independent members of the Jersey Economic Council. In summary, it promotes an entrepreneurial culture, embracing the importance of the new economy being created globally through technology, artificial intelligence and data, a subject I'm familiar with. We must aspire to and achieve the highest level in education and skills. The government's role should primarily be to facilitate an environment in which entrepreneurship and innovation flourish, and then to let the private sector and the arms length businesses get on with it. Farming, hospitality and the creative industry have an importance well beyond their economic impact and need to be supported accordingly. Whilst undertaking my migration controls work, I was pushing for and will propose, whatever my future role if elected again, a user-friendly online portal to enable employers in Jersey to receive employee requests and then process and improve licenses quickly and effectively. We are no longer in a buyer's market. We must realise that the staff we need have many options and choices as to where they can work, and we must do everything we can to make Jersey an attractive option. This also includes providing healthcare from day one, and we must also ensure our temporary employees get something back for their social security contributions. Our economy and government support for business is a huge subject, so I will leave it there. Await your questions and seek your support by voting for me on the 22nd of June. And thank you, Chairman.
Uncannily at 2 minutes. Thank you very much indeed.
It's called rehearsal and preparation.
That's all that's ever required. Thank you very much, Roland. Let's go to Lucy next. Lucy, your 2 minutes starts when you start.
Thank you. I've spoken a lot over these past few weeks about the need for the next States Assembly and the government to reconnect with islanders on a meaningful level. And the more people I've spoken to during the campaign, the stronger that message has become. Almost every door I knock on, the feedback's the same. We don't just want change, we need it. So often it comes back to one simple fact: people don't feel listened to and they don't feel valued. And that includes businesses. From the hospitality bosses saying that they feel forgotten about, and the retailer tearing his hair out about red tape and paperwork, to the community care business owner fighting for payments, and the farmer brimming with loads of innovative ideas for diversification, but who feels like he really is banging his head against a brick wall. People are frustrated and some are even defeated. Of course, no one could have imagined the challenges that the outgoing government would have had to face when we elected them 4 years ago. And in that regard, I think we've done okay to be where we are currently. But you won't need me to tell you of the challenges ahead, and we're already feeling their impacts. So no individual or political party can claim to be able to tackle any of those big issues such as housing, population, cost of living and doing business, recruitment, and so on their own. Instead, I truly believe we've got to work together as a community. And so I return to my initial point that we need to reconnect with islanders. We have to if we've got any chance of working collaboratively. And most importantly of all, we need a government which will listen, and we need strong, inspiring leadership. And that's why I've been repeating the following mantra in all of my speeches. It's time for a new start, a reset. It's time for a fresh perspective that's still proudly Jersey. Because I've been listening, and that message is louder and clearer than ever. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Lucy. And from Lucy, we'll go to Christina Moore. Christina, your 2 minutes again starts when you start.
Thank you, Murray. And I would like to start by thanking the Chamber of Commerce and its membership for the open and frank dialogue that we've held with Scrutiny over the past 4 years. Together, we are stronger. And as a small community, we should embrace our agility and our ability to remain connected and to respond in an agile manner. The past 4 years have been tough for most of you, but we learned the most from the difficult times. And this election is well timed as we reflect on those lessons and use experience to define how we move forward to build a better future for our wonderful island community. One of Jersey's greatest strengths has been its entrepreneurial spirit. It's the small and medium-sized businesses that make our island such a vibrant place to live, and I want to keep it that way. I'm a hand up rather than a handout politician, but for the system to function properly, people need hope, something to aspire to. Regulation should be, of course, kept to a minimum with taxes and other charges. Our current system only benefits those who succeed and sell their business or asset through the lack of a capital gains tax. It is a much harder environment to start up a new enterprise. It takes months for a small business to open a new bank account, for example. Our high regulatory standards are important, of course, on the international stage, but we need a Jersey-sized approach that is suitable for island-based businesses. Many of you have expressed frustration and the non-event that has been the population policy. It has created the worst of all worlds for business. I will introduce a People and Skills Commission to keep a real-time view of the number of people who are here, the availability of homes for them, and the skills gaps that you, the business people, are finding. We must also ensure that we have enough affordable homes to make them welcome. This is about creating a partnership, and I will listen.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Christina. Helen, you're next up. And so once you're unmuted and ready to go, we'll have your 2 minutes worth.
Thank you very much. My name is Helen Evans, and I'm the Reform Jersey candidate for this district. I decided to stand because I believe that I have the skills to be an effective States member representing the people of these 3 parishes. I trained as an accountant at the National Audit Office, the UK public spending watchdog, and I then worked in public sector audit elsewhere for several years, leading and managing assignments both in Europe and worldwide, mainly looking at funded projects funded by European Union, United Nations, and sometimes other funders such as the Swedish Development Agency. So I've got a lot of experience of managing funds in the public sector, including the audit of procurement and of large-scale capital projects. Additionally, it's been my privilege for 20 years to work as an Open University associate lecturer, where currently I'm mainly teaching mathematics and statistics to students on a range of programmes, including growing field of data science. I'm standing with Reform Jersey because I've been very impressed by the effective teamwork of the Reform Jersey members in the previous assembly, and I'm convinced that it is as a Reform Jersey member that I could be the most effective as a States member. As we're emerging from the disruption caused by COVID, we have the opportunity, and I believe the responsibility, to build a better and fairer society for the future, a more cohesive society in which people and businesses, particularly small businesses, can flourish. Reform Jersey has a track record of working in the States Assembly, and we've set out commitments in full in our manifesto, which we see as our contract with the public. I clearly can't cover them in full in 2 minutes, but I will say that we're focusing primarily on equality, sustainability, and accountability. And we've got a lot of workable ideas, some of which members have tried to bring in the previous assembly and not got through. And I hope that we will have more of us elected this time round and a better prospect.
Helen, thank you very much indeed. I'm not sure if
those such as plans on affordable housing on government-owned land through. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much. There were a couple of breakups on your Wi-Fi there we were getting, but other than that, we got pretty much all the message through.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. My connection should be quite good.
It's good now. That's great. Thank you very much indeed to Helen Evans. We'll move from Helen Evans to Ian Gorst. Ian Gorst, you've got 2 minutes whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Murray. I'm Ian Gorst and I'm standing as an independent candidate. Since 2018, my job as Minister for External Relations and Financial Services has been to stand up for Jersey in the world, to support local businesses overseas and to help grow our economy. I negotiated a Brexit deal for Jersey, which maintained our constitutional privileges and protected our UK free trade route. Brexit wasn't Jersey's decision, and new trading rules with Europe are inevitably more bureaucratic. But I stood up for Jersey, defended our position, and achieved the best possible trade deal with the EU. As External Relations Minister, I aim to promote Jersey's global trade in all sectors. I've encouraged inward investment to help local industries to grow, and last year we signed our first direct bilateral investment treaty with more in the pipeline. As the Minister responsible for financial services, I've represented the industry in our key markets, kept it competitive and delivered growth, jobs and revenue to fund public services. And I've worked closely with Digital Jersey to promote diversification, ensuring we have a good variety of local jobs. At the beginning of COVID, I was dragged into the Treasury to give additional support to businesses. I was part of that team that developed the co-funding payroll scheme and the business disruption loan guarantee scheme, supporting wages and ensuring businesses had access to lending. There are current issues and they must be dealt with fairly and proportionately on an individual basis. Looking ahead, we must address a number of challenges. The housing and cost of living crisis are leaving our talented young people without hope and causing them to move elsewhere. We need to support businesses to recruit and accommodate staff, and we need to extend our skills training to deliver more of what islanders and businesses need in the future. Government itself needs to be smaller, more responsive, and an enabler, not a hindrance. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. The closest to 2 minutes that we've had yet. That's something that the standard that we can keep up. Ian Gorst, thank you very much indeed. Lyndon Farnham next. Lyndon.
Thank you, Murray, and good morning all. During this term of office, I have worked on behalf of all islanders and businesses during one of the most challenging periods in our recent history to ensure Jersey remained resilient, safe and financially secure. My key focus during the pandemic was on protecting our health, our businesses, the economy and of course preserving islanders' jobs and livelihoods. In my role as a minister, I have represented the island overseas, both defending and promoting our interests and strengthening our relationships with other countries and jurisdictions. My key priorities for the next term of office are tackling the sharp rises in the cost of living, resolving the housing affordability crisis, rebuilding and further developing our economy, improving skills and education to provide new opportunities for retraining and reskilling for islanders of all ages, to finally getting our new hospital built on time and within budget and ready to be fully operational and treating patients by December 2026. And to make certain we do get strong, decisive leadership to rebuild islanders' confidence, to unite our States Assembly, deliver improved management of the public sector, smaller government structures and rigid cost controls to ensure we're delivering the very best possible value for the taxpayer. Now, Jersey, as we all know, is facing significant challenges, and it's important for islanders to elect a States Assembly that is both representative of our community, but which also contains the skills and the experience necessary to deal with these challenges that lie ahead. My aim is to be the best possible representative, to continue to serve our businesses, our community, uphold our special parish systems and unique island identity, and to work hard on your behalf to secure our future prosperity and well-being. Thank you, Murray.
Thank you very much indeed, Lyndon. Thank you to everyone for their 2 minute round. If you are watching this and you do want to ask a question, then there's a little Q&A box at the bottom. This is mostly here, though, for the recording that will be sent to all chamber members. Now, staff shortages because of recruitment problems, with a lack of affordable housing and a population policy that makes it a challenge at best to keep talent on island and makes it difficult to attract those that we need to help Jersey function properly. All of this which is causing an escalation in the cost of running a business. Some of the subjects that the membership have asked of us to ask to you. Population, housing, economy, they're a real problem. So let's start by talking about, unsurprisingly, population. It was referred to by at least 2 or maybe even 3 of our candidates to start off with there. The population policy that we have at the moment, and we'll start with someone. I'll come to you first, Helen, and then we'll move our way around. So you'll be first up in a moment. When it comes to our population policy, have we got a population policy, or have we got a plan for a future population policy? And do you think it is the right population policy?
Now, that is indeed the question, and that is indeed a good question. And I think that the most recent population policy that's been put to the States is indeed rather more of a kind of statement of intention and the setting out of the sorts of things we need to consider than something we could really call a finalised policy. Now, clearly, one of the things I'm aware of here is that it's been suggested we need to collect more data. And of course, the background to this, in part, is that we've recently had the census population figure, which is about 103,000, which is rather less than we would have anticipated from the statistics unit's estimates of inward and outward migration, and therefore of net population change in the years running up to that. And there's all sorts of reasons that the estimates are only estimates, and they can only be estimates because we don't actually have a real-time system for collecting data on people who enter and leave the island to live. I'm not talking about holidaymakers. And that's the sort of thing you get in Scandinavian countries, and it does require the government holding rather a lot of data about people, which traditionally has not been terribly well received by the British public. So the estimates are only estimates, and they come with sort of uncertainty. But what we don't know is whether the estimates have systematically been overestimates, and that's why the population turns out to be less than we're expecting, or whether the estimates were pretty on bang on right, but a lot of people have left the island during COVID. So we really are lacking data on whether we'd estimated the trend slightly incorrectly and overestimated it, or whether the trend has actually changed as a result of COVID. So there is, I think, a big question to be decided as to whether we actually have an increasing overpopulation problem, as we've always kind of thought we do, or whether we are actually possibly tipping into a point where we have the problem faced by a lot of small island economies of declining population. And certainly at the moment, we're seeing not enough workers. So I would suggest that we do need perhaps to think about that. Well, we clearly need to think about it, but perhaps a 5-year interim census might not be a
Thank you, Helen. Thanks for stopping at that point there. Roland, you know I'm bound to come to you on this. You've been the minister who's been dealing with the population and migration policy for the last 4 years. We've had various comments about it over that time, some from business, some from just the general population, some of it myth and some of it probably based on their evidence of the challenges they're having. Why did it take so long to get a population policy that said we need to look forward and then get some facts and figures?
When I started 2 years ago, basically started with a blank sheet of paper. And the reason I started with a blank sheet of paper is everybody for the last 20 years had kicked the can down the road and hadn't actually addressed a population policy. A population policy previously has been based on numbers, like 325 per year increase in 2011. Well, congratulations, Jersey. We absolutely smashed that, didn't we? Averaging about 1,000. That's not a policy. That's what I actually had to inherit. We do have the strongest controls around. The Control on the Housing and Work Law, which is in the process of being amended, have actually brutal controls to allow to determine who is allowed into the island, where they lay their head at night, and where they earn their daily crust. And that's what we have at our disposal. Because previously to that, we had a catchment area of 600 million people in the European Union who could arrive here and do whatever they want. Those were the only controls that we have had. Now, I'm going to say Helen is absolutely right in what she says. We have absolutely no near real-time data in order to make decisions. Now, I'm not, and I absolutely flatly refuse to go out there and conjure up any sort of plan just to meet the needs of the island's perceived needs and not do something that can be based on fact and evidence. And when you try and work out what we had to work with, the data we had to work with, unfortunately, it was zilch. Now, the first thing we did is tying up in line with the combined employee reporting system. So you now monthly have to return your tax, social security, and manpower data. We are now put in a situation where we're collecting that on a monthly basis. That is merely a start in what we've got to do. Let's go to the census. Yes, Helen's absolutely right. The forecasting estimation of Stats Jersey overplayed that trend by 3,000 people. So we still don't actually know whether that trend is actually 3,000 people. We don't actually know how many people have left. And another thing, coming to Christina's point, when she's going to set up a skills whatever commission, I honestly recommend she reads the population policy, because everything she suggested is already in there. Is we have to understand who's coming in and who's coming out of the island, so we can supplement the skills of the people that we are leaving. Absolutely got to do that. Another thing is we've got to understand where people live, how many houses we've got, not just the numbers, but the breakdown of who lives there. Because we have been making decisions to build whatever it is, thousands of one-bedroom flats in town. And we haven't actually worked out where one-bedroom flat owners go afterwards. So there's been no data to enable informed decisions about what we need to build and why. So, Murray, I know you're sticking your hand up there, but I absolutely fruit these allegations that there's no population policy. And I would go back and challenge the previous governments of the last 5 years, or 10 years, 15 years, for absolutely ignoring the issue. Thank you.
Okay, governments of the last 10, 15 years have ignored the issue. Ian Gorst, you knew I was coming to you next.
Indeed, I did, Murray, and I'm surprised that you yourself can be an impartial chair when, of course, you were indeed, together with Senator Routier, my right-hand men, in dealing with population policy. And there's no value in your members, Murray, seeing contestants sling mud across the Zoom. There's no value at all. Whether we've got the perfect statistics, Roland is right, we don't. And I would contend that the reality is, and Helen really touched on it, you never ever have perfect statistics in which you can make the decisions about issuing your members with licenses, what category of license they're going to get. So there is a population policy being enacted week in, week out, with your members seeking licenses, changing their staffing levels. All of that is actually happening, and that is the real-time population policy. But we do need to, very much as Senator Moore has been saying, the idea of a skills commission, it's alluded to in some form with the population policy, is yes, deliver some more real-time evidence, but actually work cooperatively with businesses. Because actually the census has told us that the forecast and what happened previously, and this is common sense, we know this, don't we? The trends up to the previous census have not been borne out in reality, and yet it's those trends that statisticians use to calculate the ongoing number of people in our community. So they've not been borne out. Some of that is because we haven't seen the growth as we saw before the previous census, and some of it is the big unknown. 1,500 people had left between the calculation and the census. And it's that big unknown that I think we really should be worried about going forward. And it's that we need to get a real grip on, because we all know about anecdotal stories of people leaving. We know that Brexit has caused people to leave. We know that COVID has caused people to leave. It's that issue that we need to get to the heart of. And it's that issue that also will help us resolve some of the other big policy issues.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go to Christina Moore next. Christina, your take on population policy. You've got questions coming in as well, and we'll come to those in just a little while. But first, your say on this.
Thank you. Well, population is absolutely critical, and particularly so, of course, for business, because they need the people to support their businesses and to make them the successes that they are. We do need a different approach, a more listening approach, and that's why I think a People and Skills Commission joining up and absolutely focusing on that real-time data, where the gaps are and how we can best respond to them, is critical. At the moment, what we are seeing is a decline in our population. I would agree with Helen that we are seeing some depopulation, as can be the case in some small island jurisdictions. And we need to resolve that. We can only do so by offering some attraction to remaining in the island, and that comes down to housing at the end of the day. As we all knock on doors, we're meeting so many families where there are children and grandchildren living under one roof with the grandparents, and this is putting a massive amount of pressure on people. We are seeing a real change in our structure, and we need to ensure that people can enjoy a good quality of life here, and that comes to identifying sites for housing, identifying quicker fixes as well, whether that's converting properties into housing and accommodation, particularly for our short-term staff, but also identifying new sites and resolving long-term issues like the derelict glass houses that have been blotting our landscape. And I brought an amendment to the Bridging Island plan to resolve that and offer 50% affordable housing on those sites, and the other 50% return to either agriculture or community gardens. We really have to grapple with these difficulties because there is space to create proper homes for people, but we just need to work on the solutions and be focused on delivery.
Okay, Christina, thank you very much indeed. Lyndon Farnham, Economic Development Minister currently, and have been. So in terms of the pressure on the economy from businesses not being able to get the people they need, the talent they need to be able to operate fully, that's a real frustration right at the moment when they're trying to recover post-COVID, and they can't operate at 100%.
Yeah, I know, Murray, we've had a perfect storm with Brexit and COVID and everything else that's going on that's made it hugely difficult to import the workers we need, frontline workers for our key sectors. I felt the solution was to be able to provide work permits that were not just 9 months, that's too short. And of course, with the visa application delays now, that's eating into that timing. And of course, there's considerable expense attached to those visas for what is too short a period of time to make a real difference. It's difficult because being part of the common travel area, we're bound by and working closely with UK border controls. But I think we need to try harder to find a solution to provide certain sectors such as hospitality and agriculture and retail longer term permits, so workers can come here and work for longer without having to leave after 9 months, but not long enough where they can gain housing qualifications or get into the into that cycle, because that's where the population pressures have come from. So we need to be able to bring workers in for a period of time, and then they go and we rotate that without having a long-term impact on our population. So we keep those jobs filled. Of course, I think also key is not just for hospitality, but for most industries, especially health and teaching and essentially employed, is providing accommodation at affordable prices. And that's an area covered in my manifesto in relation to looking at the relevant regulations which allow us to build very good quality, affordable key worker accommodation alongside more affordable homes.
Lyndon, thank you very much indeed. David, Ben, welcome. Good to have you with us. Thank you for being with us as well. David, with the topic under conversation here is population and population policy. And we have a population policy as voted in by the states members towards the end of this last sitting, which very much looks to now gathering data in order to be able to act upon it. Are we doing enough on population policy? What would you like to see? One of the big problems I've got, David, is I can see you, but I can't hear you. And I don't know why that is. And it may be that we need to come back to you once we can get the sound sorted out on that. You're certainly not on mute, but I believe you're connecting to audio at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to hear you. And if we can, then that's good. If we can't, nope, can't hear you now, David. I can lip read, but I can't hear you, I'm afraid. So we'll try and get that sorted. You may have to dial out and dial back in, and whenever you dial back in again, we'll pick up with you at that point, because I'm sorry that we're having that issue with you at the moment. We'll try and do our best to rectify that, but you may need to dial back in again. So we'll come back to David in just a second, because without sound, that's going to be a little bit limiting. However, questions that are coming in, I mean, one of them is that work permits are the way that the island could allow businesses to find resources in the short and long term. Will this Zoom room, support workers, allowing them access to healthcare from day one? At the moment, if you come into the island, you get access to healthcare after 6 months. And would you look at a tax rate for those who are coming in on short-term contracts, 12 to 24 months, that might give them a tax rate that will attract the right and appropriate talent to come into the island? So how do we attract talent into the island? You'll know that the Chamber of Commerce, along with the JHA, were instrumental in the MOU that the External Affairs Department set up for us with Antigua and Barbuda. We have people coming in from Rwanda, from Kenya, from the Philippines, from far afield as well as closer to home where it's more difficult. So how do we attract skills into the island, and would having better terms on social security for healthcare help all of that? Ian Gorst, you were a minister or assistant minister, I think, at Social Security at one time. So you'll know firsthand on the social security side of it and healthcare. Should we have access to healthcare from day one for workers coming in?
You're reminding your members of my sins, Murray, this morning, aren't you? And can I just say, maybe I missed it, but I don't think you went to Lucy in answering the last question. But
thank you. You're absolutely right. In which case, I should do that before I come back to you. Would you mind?
If that's all right, and then
yes.
I'm happy to answer the question you just asked, because it's incredibly crucial to solving those problems.
Okay, Lucy, my apologies. It's because the screen moved around just when I was looking at everyone. So my apologies to you. Population policy, Lucy, what should we be doing about this?
Thank you, Murray, and thank you, Ian, as well, for flagging that up. I mean, a lot of it has already been said, hasn't it? But I suppose to add my points in there that perhaps we have missed is, at some point we do need some figures or some projections or aims as well, because how else do we plan the size of hospital we want in the future, the schools that we need, how many houses we actually really need to build as well? So as others have said, we need, in my view, real-time data. I'm not sure it's good enough to say we have a census even every 5 years. We need a solution for as much real-time data as possible, which is why the conversations and staying in touch with business and the community generally is so important, and we have to listen as well. I suppose most other things have been covered, but for me personally, one of the bugbears with the ongoing population conversations we have as an island is, can we somehow try and have a more positive language and discussion around population? That is something, a challenge for the government, but it's something that really I don't think we've helped ourselves with in the past, and I would like to see our next government move towards a healthier conversation around population.
When you say a healthier conversation, Lucy, what do you actually mean? Do you mean that the terminology that we use, the value of the people that we have?
Yeah, all of those things. I think it's obviously, I know it's a very divisive issue, and it always will be as well, but we see a lot even today conversations about people who are born in the UK and feel very much in our business community. They hear things even at big business events. I think it was mentioned on Twitter recently about how they're not truly part of the community, or well, you can always leave if you don't like it. And I don't think over the years that the language and the way that our government has perhaps launched some of its consultations, put some of its reports out there, have always reflected that really everybody has value in their own ways, whether they are earn a lot of money or they earn less money as well.
Okay, thank you for that, Lucy, and thanks for your response. And Ian, let's go back to that question about healthcare from day one for people coming into the island.
Well, can I just, I didn't know that Lucy was going to do that, but she has really set the groundwork for what I wanted to say about dealing with some of these skills issues, because it's about welcome. So we obsess over the number, and we understand why the number is important. Of course we do, but it's about welcome. And the new MOU, Murray, that has been signed with Antigua and Barbuda will only work if, when those individuals come, they can make it stack up financially. And that's been a problem for some of our communities coming. They're not able to make it stack up financially. They're not being able to find appropriate accommodation. They're not feeling welcome. If they've got healthcare issues, they're not having them dealt with, and that can have severe implications for our own community if we're not providing that support. So we need to look at a new settlement for those individuals who are coming on a 9-month contract. Let's remind ourselves, you've got a 9-month visa, 9-month contract. You shouldn't be on a 0 hours contract. You should have a proper contract as allowed for under employment law, and you should expect all of the provisions that employers would provide to all of their employees. I really think we can do it, but it needs government to work with you, Murray, in Chamber and your members, and form a really strong partnership, because I think the health issue, I think most islanders have probably now would support a shortening of the period to which people who come to our community can access health. We need to think about the methodology and the costing of that, but I think that's a really positive would be a really positive step forward. So it's really about welcome. It's a recognition that people come to our community, and it's got to be mutually beneficial. And this thing about, if you come to Jersey for a short period of time, that's slightly different. We've got to recognise you are benefiting our community, and we want to benefit you. If you're coming here to live because you see your future here and you commit to this community, then you are one of us. I'll stop there, Murray.
Right, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Point well made. David, speak up. Let's see if we can hear you. Sadly not. Sadly not. So there's a connection somewhere on your audio, because we got everybody else, we haven't got you. So somewhere on your audio, there's an audio setting, whether it's your desktop, your laptop, or your mobile, that is not releasing that. So I can't help you from this end here. I will go to Helen Evans at this time though. Helen, listening to what Ian was just saying there, you were in agreement with a great deal of that. I could tell from your facial expression. We've got to value the skills that come into our island and welcome them. But there's this healthcare issue as well. Does the Reform Party support healthcare from day one, the minute people arrive in the island?
It's not something we actually discussed when we were preparing our manifesto, but certainly it is something which strikes me as being unfair. And the fact that people come here and, as Ian set out, they're contributing, and it should, where it works well, be a mutually beneficial arrangement. It is really a bit exploitative that people are paying into the system and they're working here and they're not allowed healthcare. And in particular, and it was something that was raised when we spoke to the hospitality industry, it's even worse where there are people who come back year after year for 9 months each time, and it resets, and each time they need to do the 6 months before they're eligible. So I certainly think reducing that period is something we should look at. On the tax, which was the other part of the question, I'm not so convinced by that. I think that the unfairness at the moment is people are paying into the system and they're having to wait too long to qualify for health. That I think we should address. I don't think our tax rates are particularly high, and I think we want to come at that more from the point of view of ensuring people are paid a fair wage.
Okay.
And leave the tax as it is, but the healthcare does need looking at, certainly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. David, I see you're back with us again. And sadly, still no audio from you. Sadly, still no audio. I'm sorry, it's very difficult for you to take part, and I know it's very frustrating for you at this point. And there's very little we can do at this point. It is definitely an audio issue with the equipment that you're using. That much we do know. Christina, I'm going to come to you. Christina, in terms of the question, which was basically around can we allow workers that come into our island, give them the value of reducing the time it takes for healthcare for them to be able to receive it, and any tax benefits?
Thank you, Murray. This is a really important question, and I think it is one that needs addressing. I came to the island as a non-qualified person on a licence, and well, I think over the period of time, the many years that I have been here, contributed to island life. And one of the first things that I really loved about the island was the sense of community. And Ian talked really well about welcome, and that is absolutely essential. So people are people. They should have the ability to access healthcare from the beginning if they're contributing to a system. We cannot simply look at people as human capital, and I think we have changed a great deal over the period of years. And if you look at my manifesto on my website, there's a snapshot from the census there, which is a graph that scares me, to be quite frank, which shows the age groups per gender and how they have changed in comparison with the previous census in 2011. And we really have got to focus on the age demographic and the dependency ratio, the number of people who are no longer working because they've retired versus the people who are working age and here to support and look after those people who have served the island and contributed throughout their working life. So in order to do that and to ensure that our own young people stay or return once they've gone away to follow an education, to gain new skills elsewhere, then we really must focus on ensuring that we look after them when they're here. I've spoken to people, local people, who've actually contributed all of their working life as well and then left to retire. And they too find difficulties in accessing healthcare. I've spoken to one lady in particular who, when she returns to the island, has to take out insurance, despite the fact that she has worked here all of her life.
Thank you, Christina. Roland, the camera came back on, and I think it's high time for you to speak. So in terms of healthcare and accessing healthcare, we have workers coming into the island. They can't get healthcare for 6 months. Is that right?
Yes, it is. And I've been public on my disagreement with that from the outset. I think it's 100% wrong. We ask people to come over here, many of them working in roles that are potentially damaging to their health, certainly in agriculture, hospitality. There could be burns in the kitchen, I don't know, damaging limbs on the fields. I really don't mind what it is, but I think it's 100% that they must have a full healthcare service from day one. Now, what they can do is they can go and get emergency treatment at the hospital. This happens, but they don't get the ongoing support for that particular injury or illness, and that's wrong. Now, I made it actually quite clear. I don't mind whether it is the HCS to deliver that service, or whether it is an employer-based insurance scheme that delivers that. Whichever one it is, the discussion needs to happen so that those people coming to our island have a surety that they're going to get looked after health-wise from day one. I'm very strong on that. The message here is absolutely clear from all of us. We have got to make this island an attractive destination for people to come here. And they need to understand when they're sitting. imagine you're sitting, okay, in a village in Kenya, because it is quite current at the moment, to go a long way from home in order to go for 9 months to earn some money to feed your family is a big, big decision. It is going into the unknown. And they need to have absolutely clear information as to what they're going to receive, where they're going to live, how much they're going to earn, how much their outgoings are going to be that accommodation, be that tax, be that social security, so they can make that informed decision and return back to their homes after 9 months, if that is the time that we are discussing, but with a positive experience to share with their colleagues and say, yeah, Jersey's a good place to go. We have a symbiotic relationship. We can go there, we can deliver a service to them, the island looks after us, and we can return, repeat the process. So talking on the tax situation, I think it's very wrong that they are paying social security, whereas they need to have however many 9 months in different tranches to get to 4.5 years before they're actually allowed to draw any pension contributions from that areas. I think they ought to be given a choice. Pay less contribution for no pension contribution, for no pension returns when they reach the age, or contribute to the pension contributions and be allowed to draw on it in the period of time when they're 67 or whatever the date is. I think we need those choices out there. But I know you're sticking your hand up, Murray. I'm going to finish it. We are in a seller's market. We cannot be complacent about attracting people to come here. We must give them a really, really good experience in return for asking them to help us out in a lot of the staffing issues that we have today.
Thank you, Roland. Thank you, Roland. Thank you very much indeed. Lucy, I'm not going to forget you. Let's talk healthcare with you, and because I haven't asked that question to you yet. It seemed like I had, but I hadn't. So let's talk about that. Is this an unfair system that we've got at the moment?
Yeah, I think the feedback that we've definitely heard as one of our Better Way meetings was from hospitality, and they were saying this really is an issue, particularly with people coming back on repeat 9-month contracts and having to start their qualifying periods again. I believe the Farmers Union have an insurance scheme which works relatively well for them, and perhaps there are some things that we could learn for other industries there, or whether it is just that the government says no, you have access from day one. I am aware that we would probably need to build some safeguards into that. It was suggested at one of our meetings people could try to move here just to get healthcare for certain things. That's a debatable point. I'm not sure there's any evidence to base that on, but it's just something that perhaps we'd need to be aware when we did develop some kind of scheme.
Yeah, I think in one of the other hustings they talked about tourism-based healthcare, I think was the term that they used for it. Lyndon Farnham, let's see you and hear from you again with regard to this. Workers coming in, Ian touched on it, the welcome that is needed. We as an island need skills in our island, and we probably need to do better in ensuring that they're more valued. Would that be fair?
Yeah, absolutely, Murray, and we need to be realistic. When we are inviting people to come and work here, we must give them the right experience and make it affordable and viable. I mean, I think the question was asked 2 points. One is, should we give access to healthcare from day one? And I certainly think, I believe in the principle that if you pay into a system, whether it's tax or social security, you should be able to access the benefits if necessary. Of course, there are some insurance schemes that cover that to ensure people that come here are protected, but subject to the detail and the financials being fully understood, then I would support that. And then in relation to special tax rates being applied to new workers, well, I don't think I would support changing our existing tax structure, which I think is quite generous in terms of, compared to other jurisdictions in terms of allowances. So I think if we manage to sort out the problem with access to healthcare, then the tax issue should resolve itself.
Okay, Thank you very much. Thanks for being brief on that as well. Let's talk about skills here, because one of the big areas that businesses in Jersey find is they can't get the appropriate skills, and it's not just businesses. Look at government and look at the government talent that we bring into the island, and those numbers have, of course, grown over the last 4 years. So let's talk about skills, and let's talk about growing our own. Do we do a good enough job to invest in skills in our island? Christina Moore first.
Well, I see that we have a question about headcount in schools and education, and my manifesto makes a commitment to improve our investment in education. Children are our future, and of course it starts there. But we also have to maintain an education, continuing development for everyone. We're all very aware that the jobs of today are potentially going to disappear into tomorrow, and the large employers of tomorrow are very much likely to be areas that we're not currently aware of. So we need an agile workforce, people who are well skilled and able to adapt as our community adapts, and as technology moves and changes our working environments as well. So I most certainly would advocate that. You mentioned the issue of government training and skills, and I most certainly think that we ought to have more confidence in the skills that we have locally. We have some exceptional people in our local workforce, and we really need to look at the rules with which the application process occurs in government. There's a very simple way to change the focus of the Appointments Commission so that they look at the most suitable candidate rather than what they consider to be the best, which is invariably the person who has the largest in terms of population experience, and that invariably points them towards UK candidates with that level of experience, whereas there are many people in the island already who have excellent skills and experience to contribute to our public sector.
Thank you, Christina. Lucy, skills on island and the investment that we put into skills on island, are we doing enough? Clearly, you can always do more, but it does seem that this is a very long-term approach that we need to make sure that we're on the right footing before we get going.
Absolutely, and I think the thing that really needs to underpin that for me is a revamped, revitalised Highlands College, actually. Not necessarily a university for Jersey, but to have a complete overhaul of the organisation, new name, everything. Let's change it. Let's get a new site in town with the funding that I believe there's been conversations about it for many years, but it's just not really been prioritised. And you've then got that base, you've got something to look to where you can start to build these things out of. There's lots of good work going on between businesses, working with government, but there's no real joined up approach to it all. And in a conversation recently, it was highlighted to me that, well, yes, we're thinking now, we're trying to catch up for the skills for now, but what about the skills for the future? So it was given as an example of like electric car mechanics, for example. Well, we need to start thinking about things for the future like that. Now, who's having those joined up conversations? Are we backing them as an island? That's long term, but to do that, to me, we need to spend some money and actually start with this community college approach that business can then join into and use the facilities, or have a wing of it that's dedicated to digital or to film tech, or so lots of different things like that to keep us vibrant and exciting, keep people on island. The other thing I would say quickly as well is we for the good work that we do in education, we are then losing people when they go off to university or to work somewhere else for a number of years, and we're not seeing as many people coming back as they used to. And also just coming back generally, we don't keep any track of where our students go to or the kind of jobs that they're working in. Could we be headhunting some of our own back more effectively, and perhaps offering them incentives to move back to the island?
Interesting. Oh, that sounds like that could be a David with sound. Is that a David with sound?
Is it? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You have a voice. We're very happy to have you with us, David. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
I don't know what happened, because I've done everything as I should have done it, and it didn't work, and that's most peculiar. And it was telling me that the code that I was given wasn't the correct one, which was peculiar.
You're with us now, David.
Gremlins, Murray, gremlins.
Gremlins are everywhere, sir. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. We've been talking about population for some time, and we've moved on to talk right now about skills. So I'll give you a couple of minutes just to pick up on that. So we're looking at skills and where we should invest, and should we invest more in skills and growing some of our own. Lyndon Farnham, I was about to come to you there from some of the points that Lucy were making, which are quite interesting there in terms of a revamped, remodeled, renamed, relocated Highlands College. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, surely it's called a university, isn't it?
Well, I mean, what's in the name these days, Murray? The important thing is the activity that goes on there, and I think we've made great improvements. I mean, Highland College is something we can be extremely proud of. A university for Jersey could be a good idea, but you have to remember, with universities come influxes of people, and we have to think about the impact on population of that kind of thing. But I'm not saying I wouldn't support it. Right at the heart of the new economic strategy that was launched recently is to be a skills-led economy where people are the key assets. So we have to do whatever we can to make that happen. I think a good example is something that the economy department worked very successfully with Digital Jersey on, and that's the opening of the Digital Jersey Academy. That's been hugely successful, and there's great potential there to deliver skills training in an area that's probably going to be most important to us as we move forward, and that's the digital sector. So yeah, we can always do more. Highlands College, I think, can continue to evolve. We must give it all the support it needs to evolve, and whether that evolves into a university remains to be seen. But the underpinning drive has to be to make sure we have skills, retraining and skills available for islanders of all ages.
Okay. Just a point that I'll lay at Roland's feet in just a second, which is every university town I've ever been to, they seem to be working in the bars and the restaurants, and they never have a shortage of staff. But I'll come back to that in just a second. Lyndon, just one question, and it was brought in from the questioner, which was Phil, who said there was a vote for a £10 million increase in funding for education and a 15% headroom on budget for headmasters, which you, among others on here, voted against. So the question was why?
I'm trying to think back. If I remember rightly, the education minister had said that he was waiting for the inclusion review and the funding review, and I'm trying to recall that. But there was so the schools, including so the panel. This was a review brought by the scrutiny panel, a proposition, an amendment to the island plan brought by the scrutiny panel. The education minister argued to wait for further information to be brought forward to find out exactly where the funding was going to be required, rather than put it into the funding, the 10 million and the 15% headroom that I think the debate dealt with.
Okay.
So that's why I didn't support it, because I went with the education minister's request to the Assembly to wait for further information to come so we could identify where that money needed to go.
All right, thank you. We'll come to Ian on that in just a second. David Ben, we haven't given you much opportunity to speak yet for lots of reasons, but we will now. In terms of growing our own and talent and knowing your background, do we need to have faculties that play to our strengths and have better on-island skills training?
Yes, we do, Murray. We need to go back to basics, really, and grow far more of our own produce, of our own food. But in order to do that, and in the way that we need to do it in the future, we do need to upskill people so that they can have the right techniques that are available to grow in a more sustainable way, so that it's good for our environment as well as for commerce. So it would be a good idea if we reintroduce training in agriculture and horticulture and many other fields as well. It's one of our policies within the Jersey Liberal Conservatives that we upskill people and have far more training, so that for the future we have a good base. But perhaps we could go a little bit further and reintroduce far more analysis of soils and plants, so that we can grow for what the market requires, and also marketing, because that's a very difficult thing when if you're growing on a small scale. How do you market your produce? It's not always a good thing just to put it on the wall, and that supermarkets, of course, don't accept that way. So we need to have a marketing strategy as well as a growing strategy.
Scientific agriculture, how about that for a faculty that we could have?
It would be very good, but not only agriculture, Murray, horticulture, but also fisheries as well. Perhaps we could develop a department that would concentrate on those three disciplines, so that we can really educate people for the future and then move ahead. And why couldn't we become a world leader in those fields? Okay. If we look at the soil, it's an incredible science on its own. So is the sea. It's a vast science. And although I have a scientific training in the soil, I know a fraction of what the soil is about. It's a very, very important organic material, and we need to know a lot more so that we can grow sustainably.
Sure. Okay. Scientific agricultural faculty, Ian Gorst, much like the one they've got at the Wren School of Business that teaches in English, but that's our nearest university. There I am banging on about it again. So can we change our skills system and make it more attractive to grow more of our own?
I fundamentally believe we can, Murray, and it's one of the critical challenges that we face. It's not necessarily the headline challenge like housing is, like cost of living is, but actually if we are to remain long-term successful, and I believe that we can, dealing with skills is that critical point. Lyndon's talked about the Digital Academy, the work that Digital Jersey does, the work that they've done now with the Digital Academy. It all fits in actually with things that David's talking about. It doesn't sound on the surface as though it does, but the digitization of agriculture as well in some sectors is taking place right before our very eyes. I think Lucy spoke about electric cars, that they are serviced like all our cars are now, using technology. So it's this technological and digital training which is going to be key to our future. Murray, you know about the employers group. They are doing good work connecting industry with government. Government sometimes has stepped back from the skills agenda in an unhelpful way. I think that some type of commission, as others have said about skills and people, is critical in bringing everybody together so that we are rightly training, not just for the jobs in our economy now, but in the next 5 years, but longer than that as well. You come back to that question, Marianne, I don't know if you raised it or not, or somebody else did, about university. What I've learned about the university question is it's unnecessarily divisive. If you go to Gibraltar, they've got the Gibraltar University, but it started by offering one course to about 12 people. We've got the University College at Highlands. It's offering more courses to more people, but we get a bit funny about calling it a university. So I don't think we should get hung up on the name. I think we should focus on moving forward with, yes, the best possible site, offering the best opportunities. And if we're going to offer the best opportunities, we do need to partner, I believe, with the best, be it the Russell Group institutions in the UK as well, who can support us in providing that. Therefore, we can train our own, we can be prepared for the future, and we don't need to necessarily have that overwhelming number of young people that you get in university towns or wherever you are across the globe. The other thing about technology in education is right now, if the electors of St Mary, St Ouen and St Peter decide it's time for me to take a new challenge, I could decide that one of those challenges is to study at Harvard. I don't need to go there. I can just sign up on this computer. I've got fantastic internet connection and a way to go. So the world really is our oyster, but it does need partnership between government and industry to make sure that we are reaping the benefit. Now, I do want to answer Phil's question if I can,
Sure.
Marie, because it's only fair. And I might also be misremembering, but I don't think so. So I sat on Senator Valois. She, as you know, did a education funding gap review while she was Minister for Education. And I let her tell her story. It's not for me to do that. But suffice to say, it was a very difficult, painful process to go through that, much more than it should have been. And she had to fight with all her might. And she set up a very small group of individuals to help her in that fight. This money wasn't, if I recall correctly, in that funding gap review. If it had been, then I would have supported it, nor was the 15%. So that was stage one of the funding gap review. I have got no doubt whatsoever from speaking to teachers on the door that the new education minister, whoever that is, will need to make sure that that gap is funded going forward, and then think about the lack of resource that some schools currently encounter. But we can't just throw money. We need to have a proper policy and a proper structure that we're going to invest in, because as you know though, Murray, every department comes asking for money all the time, and the challenge for politicians is to make sure it's actually going to deliver improvement and deliver value.
Very good. Okay, I'm going to go to Helen Evans. Helen, I know you're itching to get onto this subject.
Thank you.
I am skills in education.
I've taught for European University for 20 years, and earlier stage of my life I was taught maths in secondary schools for 4 years, and there's a huge amount I could say, but I need to confine myself to making a few points. One thing I would say is we're talking about skills and we're talking about education, and there are clearly different levels of education. And one thing I will say, and it's in our manifesto actually, is the kind of typical British distinction and division between vocational and academic education and the social attitudes that go with that have not served us well. And we need to get away from that and the snobbery that says academic is better than vocational. It's a bit of a false dichotomy anyway. And I would cite what I would say is an example of very good practice locally. Holier offers the International Baccalaureate. And we need to realise that's a fantastic opportunity available to very few people outside fee-paying schools in the UK, actually, the IB. There are very few state schools in the UK that offer it. Holier offers not only the diploma, but also the careers programme. And both of those are quite interesting in that they actually integrate cross-curricular themes and skills with academic study in a way that perhaps we haven't been very good at doing in much of the British model of education. The other thing I will say is the whole higher education sector in the UK is in something of a state of flux, you might say crisis in various respects. And I think one thing that might emerge from that in the best case scenario is that we get to a situation where perhaps we're a little less beholden to single discipline study, because we sometimes have a bit of a unhelpful divide between studying a discipline and interdisciplinarity, and often it's the interdisciplinarity which helps us solve problems in society, and the interdisciplinarity that actually develops skills. And you see this in various innovations such as the London Interdisciplinary School is an interesting. And on recruitment, I think yes, we're perhaps a bit too beholden to bringing people in and a bit awed by their experience elsewhere. There's a lot more I could say. I hope there are a few interesting points. Thank you.
There indeed. Thank you very much indeed. Roland Hewlin, the last in this round in terms of skills and investing in skills. What are your thoughts on what you've heard so far, and what's your direction of travel?
I think Digital Jersey have done a wonderful job. However, as a report recently, hopefully it is out of date and improving, talks about digital density. And digital density is the percentage of processes that could be automated, that have been automated. Now, London and Edinburgh run at 16%, and I know this is a year or two out of date, and it's a fast-moving world. London and Edinburgh run at 16%. Estonia runs at about 35%, but they started in the digital world with a blank sheet of paper in the 1990s. And we run at 10%, which is unacceptable. If you map that to the fact that another report, actually from PwC, but is supported by other major global consultancy companies, will state that by 2035, something like 30% of jobs will not be as they are today. They will be replaced by robotics and artificial intelligence. Now, this is a good thing if we understand it in advance. And this is why I'm getting down to the concept of education being relevant for today and to today's world, and the concept of lifelong learning, where people are going to have to adapt as they go through their careers. Because if your job is going to be replaced, and you've got years' notice to do that, you can reskill, readapt. And by and large, the new jobs will be higher value jobs than the old jobs, because there will be repetitive jobs that will be automated. That is a positive thing. That increases people's lifestyles. They're earning more money and also increasing the tax take, as we have a 20% tax take. That is good news. We must be prepared for that at every single stage. Now, whether that's a university or whether that's more vocational training, that Helen is saying, I don't mind. But first, we've got to recognize it today and make our education relevant and going on. Another point I'd like to say, which is really, really important, and I don't know if I'm allowed to mention names, but a certain individual came in at a high-ranking job about a year ago and stated that it was his intent to ensure that not his successor, but his successor's successor will be locally grown and locally developed. I thought that's a kick in the teeth for the young people aspiring to have great careers in this island and get to the top of the tree. I would like to see anybody that's getting close to the top of the job to be put in with a locally recruited, locally developed, and have mentoring programs to ensure they can fulfill those top jobs and give the aspiration to our young. I'm putting a hand up.
Yes, I am.
You want me to stop now, Murray?
Yes, that will do. That will do just fine.
Can I have another hour on that subject? It is so fundamentally important for our future.
Excellent,
So,
excellent. We'll let you have another hour after that, after we've all gone. Thank you very much indeed, Roland, for that. I've got time for one quick round that I wanted to get in because we did it at the last Hustings and it was just a little bit of fun. It's a yes or no, and it's a yes or no for all of you. And it is on the subject of which one should we go for? We'll go for senators. Senators or deputies. We have all deputies and connotabs right now. There are some people on this Zoom call who I think would have stood as senator had senators been around and would probably want to bring senators back. So yes or no, would you like to see senators return, or are you happy with the system of deputies in your constituencies? Christina Moore first.
It's impossible to say yes or no, of course, isn't it? Look at the competition that we have got in each and every constituency, and people are going to be delivered to the Assembly with strong mandates behind them, as long as people turn out to vote. So I guess I'm a no.
You're a no. Helen Evans, are you a yes or a no?
Again, not a single word answer, but a brief answer. We want to see a single category of states members elected in such a way that every vote has equal weighting. We're closer to that than we were, but this system doesn't quite deliver that.
Very good.
Don't care if they're called senators or deputies, if it's an island-wide thing or a district thing. One category, equal votes.
David Benn.
I'm a yes, Murray. I think we need to have an island-wide mandate. It's very important. People feel disenfranchised because they can't vote for candidates they would like to. So yes, we need an island-wide mandate. It's far more democratic.
Yes, I'm sure that every candidate has had someone come up to them and said, I would vote for you, but you're not in my constituency. Ian Gorst, senators, you want them back or not?
Yes, I do, Murray. But I will say this, we still have to make this election work. And I know islanders who feel frustrated at the loss of senators, some have been thinking about, should they go out to vote? I say to them, please do go out to vote. Let's make this election work. And then we can have the argument about bringing senators back, but I will be voting to bring them back.
Jolly good. Roland Hewland, what's your thoughts on this subject? Yes or no's?
I would say that campaigning and knocking on doors at the moment is taking 2 or 3 times longer than it did last time. And the number one reason is explaining it to everybody about why we made that decision. They feel very much disenfranchised. They know the numbers of people they can vote for is halved. They've gone from 10 people in a single deputy parish to 5 people that they can vote for. And the message I'm getting on the streets is absolutely clear. They want an island-wide mandate of some form or another. And the other reason it's taking long to campaign is because there's a lot more people working from home.
And some people take longer on a yes/no answer. Lucy Stevenson. Lucy.
I have spent many, many years of my journalistic career listening to debates about states reform, and as we've heard today, there are some massive issues that we need to tackle beyond that. So I'm a no at the moment. I want to see how this new system works. We don't like change. It's human nature that change is difficult for us. Let's see how it goes. Let's also remember that the system we have at the moment is the closest to the one that was voted for by the public in the referendum.
Talking of referendums, a referendum for bringing senators back, yes or no? So Lyndon Farnham, I think I know where you might be going with this one, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
It's a straightforward yes from me, Murray. We need an island-wide mandate. It enables members to work in the best interest of the island without fear of or favour from parish or constituency interests. It's been a key part of our structure of government in the Assembly since shortly after the Second World War, and I think it's done us well. It's a great shame we lost it, and I would support it coming back. But as others have said, in the meantime, let's focus on this election and make it work.
Well, the polls open today, certainly at St Paul's in St Helier, which means that people can vote in town. They can vote, of course, from 8:30 until 5 or 4:30 on Friday. That's for people who are working in town, so they can't vote after 4:30 or 5 o'clock, which is maybe something they need to look at, but that's maybe for another day and another argument. What I can say is, on behalf of the Jersey Chamber of Commerce, thank you to all of our candidates in this constituency for joining us. It's been a pleasure to talk to you and to find out your thoughts, and we would wish you all very, very good luck with the coming elections and the results on the 22nd, and we look forward to working with whoever is successful at the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Murray.
Thank you.